Hello and welcome to today's daily air science revision task, which is to draw a detailed diagram that shows the structure and function of vascular systems in roots, stems and leaves. The following video goes and talks about the movement of water into these vascular tissues in more detail. Hello and welcome to this A-level biology revision video on transpiration. One key area that comes up in most biology exams will talk about the water movement through a plant and the effects of different conditions that either increase or decrease this. The movement of water through plants is called transpiration. Plants have two systems for the transport of substances through them using different types of tissues. Xylems transport water and solutes from the roots to the leaves, while the phloems transport the food from the leaves to the rest of the plant. It's important to remember that the phloems are transporting the glucose from a source to a sink. Transpiration is the process by which water evaporates from the leaves, which results in more water being drawn up from the roots. Plants have many adaptations to reduce excess water loss. In some questions, you may need to comment on specific adaptations, or if you are given an adaptation to look at, you need to be able to describe how that adaptation will reduce water loss. Plants have two transport systems to move food, water and minerals through their roots, stems and leaves. These systems use continuous tubes called xylem and phloem, and together they are known as vascular bundles. It's important to remember that when we come on and we talk about xylems, xylems play a crucial role in interacting with phloem to help control the concentration of sucrose within them. Xylem vessels are involved in the movement of water through plants from its roots to its leaves via the stem. In the roots, the xylem vessels kind of make this cross shape in the middle with four phloems around them. You'll notice the root is adapted to absorb more water as it's covered in root hair cells, which increase the surface area. As we move up through the stem, we find this typical arrangement of xylem and phloem cells, where the phloem cells are on the outside, the xylem cells are on the inside. Between them is a strip called the Casparian strip that separates them. You may be asked to label a diagram that looks like this in the exam, so it's worth remembering that the phloem is always on the outside, nearer the outside of the plant, and the xylem is always on the inside. There are a range of different factors that affect transpiration. Right, light. So transpiration is increased by bright light because the stoma open wider and allow more carbon dioxide to leave the leaf through for photosynthesis. So therefore, because the stoma opened wider, more water will evaporate. Temperature causes transpiration to happen faster. Because higher temperatures cause a greater rate of evaporation, more water will diffuse out of the leaves at higher temperature. Windy conditions will cause an increase in transpiration because water vapour is removed quickly by the air movement, speeding up diffusion of more water vapour out of the leaf. And humidity. Humidity actually slows down transpiration. When the air is more humid, it has a high concentration of water in it. So therefore, it's harder for the water to diffuse out of the leaf into the air because there is not so much of a concentration gradient. One of the key areas that they can ask about when questioning about transpiration is the cohesion tension theory of water. The cohesion tension theory of water simply describes how water is bonded together and how it coheres to each other. There are a number of key points that you must remember and must talk about when talking about the cohesion of water. Water is a polar molecule that binds to other water molecules by hydrogen bonding. Talking about hydrogen bonding is very important. Water also binds to the cellulose molecules of the cell's walls by hydrogen bonding, and this is called adhesion. Right? Adhesion simply means to stick to. There is a continuous column of water connected by hydrogen bonds from where the water evaporates off the surface of the cells into the air spaces in the leaf down the water concentration gradient. When water evaporates from the surface of these cells, more water moves up to take the place that's now been vacated. The movement of the water pulls the whole column of water up all the way through the plant. It is called the cohesion tension theory because there is a continuous column of water created by the cohesion of water molecules, i.e. binding or bonding together by hydrogen bonds, and this column is under tension, i.e. being pulled up, that is created by transpiration. So when looking at transpiration, where it starts in the roots, there are a series of things that we need to talk about. In this section, I'm going to go through all the stages. The first thing that happens are that mineral ions are actively transported into root hair cells. Root hair cells have many mitochondria to provide ATP. In the vacuole of root hair cells, there is stored starch which can be easily converted into glucose to provide the raw material that is needed by the mitochondria to produce ATP. As mineral ions are transported into the cell, the water potential within them decreases. It's important to keep continually talking about water potential as we talk about transpiration. The water potential in the soil around the root is higher than in it. Therefore, the water moves down a concentration gradient by osmosis. It's a key thing to remember here that whenever we're talking about the movement of water, we refer to it as osmosis. Water moves through the root hair cells towards the endodermis. Mineral ions are actively transported towards the endodermis through protein channels. ATP provides the energy needed for the conformational change in the proteins so that they can allow the minerals to be actively transported. As mineral ions are transported from cell to cell, they lower the water potential. So therefore, water will move through the root because it moves down a concentration gradient as it moves towards the xylem. Between the root hairs and the xylem is a waterproof layer called the Casparian strip. This layer is made of cellulose which contains extra hydrophobic material, right, called suberin. Water moves through the symplast, so the continuous cytoplasm of the living plant cells that are connected through the plasmostomata by osmosis. The root hair cell has a higher water potential than the cell next to it. This is the result of the water diffusing in from the soil, which has made the cytoplasm in this cell more dilute. So water moves from root hair cell into the cell next door to it by osmosis. This process continues from the cell to the cell across the root until the xylem is reached. As water leaves the root hair cell by osmosis, the water potential of the cytoplasm falls again. And this maintains a steep water potential gradient to ensure that as much water as possible continues to move into the cells from the soil. The movement of water through the apoplast pathway, so the cell walls and the intercellular spaces, right? So water fills the spaces between the loose open network of fibres in the cellulose cell wall. It's important to remember that the apoplast pathway is under no control. The cells aren't physically controlling it, unlike the symplast pathway, where the water is needing to move through the cells, so the cells do have some control over it. As water molecules move into the xylem, more water molecules are pulled through the apoplast behind them due to the cohesive forces between the water molecules. As the water moving through the apoplast pathway reaches the Casparian strip, it enters the cell and joins up with the symplast pathway. It must do this because you require some sort of cellulose or some sort of a bridge to enter the xylem that takes it over that waterproof membrane. The pull from water moving into the xylem and up the plant, along with the cohesive forces between water molecules, creates a tension that means there is a continuous flow of water through the open structure of the cellulose wall, which offers little or no resistance. It's important that each of these stages are talked about as we go through. When you are answering a question on this, it may well be a longer answered question that you will need to keep adding in lots of detail about. Remember, water is leaving the plant at the leaves, so more water is drawn up out of the xylem cells in the leaf to replace what has been lost. Water molecules have a tendency to stick together by cohesion forces, so water leaves the xylem to enter the leaf. The more water is poured up behind it. This produces a continuous flow of water and dissolved materials moving through the xylem tubes of the root up into the stem and up into the leaves. This is known as the transpiration stream. I hope that this video has filled in some gaps. Please go back and pause the video at certain points if you want to go and look over things. Right, thank you for watching. Hopefully this video should have helped you complete your daily revision task. Please subscribe so you can keep up to date with other videos to help with your daily revision tasks. You can follow me on Facebook or follow me on Twitter to help you keep up to date.